for all.
All right, prior to the meeting, I sent residents via email a copy of what is going to be discussed. I heard back from five residents saying that they support the idea, and that was the extent. So if there is anybody who would care to be heard on this proposal, please let me know.
I have a question.
Lydia, yes.
May I be heard?
Yes. You're
I don't really understand how this gets at what you were saying in your email. The problem, as you describe it, is placing sheds so that it's too close to the property line or cutting off a window or blocking visibility on a corner. So the actual rule about where these things can go hasn't changed. They're just going to go and get reviewed by Peter. So
yes, as far as this proposal is concerned, yes.
I think what happens now is most people in the village, if they're putting up a shed and it's under a certain size, and basically everybody knows it's 144 square feet, well, I'm putting a shed that's 120 square feet. I don't know about it. They don't tell anybody about it. They can just go ahead and do it. And they do. And it happens quite a bit. And sometimes it's right on the property line. Sometimes it's on somebody else's property. I mean, it becomes people put, we have generators people put up and they assume it's on their property. It's not on their property. It's on village property. You can't, so it's just little issues like that, just say,
well, I can
you have
see
to move it
how
over a
this,
little bit more.
I can see how this addresses
I
that.
think
But
it just,
if I'm not mistaken, there's a particular instance that gave rise to this whole thing that involved a shed that would probably not require a building permit that was very close to a property line. I don't know if it would have been, not certified as okay. And isn't that the problem that Gary's concerned about? And how does this get to that issue?
There is no one particular incident that caused this. This has been something that we've discussed for a couple of years at least. We've had people put up fences on a corner that blocks visibility, and they've had to take them down again. And it's not a lot of fun telling somebody they have to take a fence down after they put it up. So there have been a number of cases, not just one.
in investigating the building code, I later found out that you can't have a wooden structure within 3 feet of your property line. It's the fire code. So the fire code says you can't have any wooden structure except a fence within 3 feet of a property line. So, that shed should not have been built, but it was built. It was there. And so I don't think the intent, to me, I don't know, Tom can speak about this, but my feeling is that we can't go back and revisit these, but we could try to make it so it doesn't happen anymore.
No, and I know, Peter, you have a terrible job, and any tools you can, use to make it less terrible in these instances, I'm all for it. I just am not sure that I guess it's good to know what's going on. I'm not opposed to it. I just don't understand how the problem, as I understood it, which may not be completely accurate, this would get to it.
So do you feel, Peter, that just people having to run, that everyone has to run it by you is enough?
I think it's helpful because people feel like, hey, I'm putting up a 100-foot shed in my property. I don't have to run it by anybody. I don't want to run it by anybody. And it causes problems when people do that. People don't realize, a lot of people, we don't have, most houses in the village don't have a survey. So most people don't even, they look at a tax map and say, oh, that's the survey. It's not. It's not. The tax map generally are wrong. So I'm not saying people have to get surveys, but we could, if they say, oh, this is what I'm doing. Oh yeah, that looks like you're fine. You're far enough away from what could be the property line. It's not a code violation. You don't need a building permit, just do it.
And not just that, a lot of people don't realize that dig requests are needed. And, I've got 3 sewer lines running through my yard going back to the houses behind me. So if I decide to put in a pond without discussing it with Peter or Johnny for that matter, I could run into some big problems.
We're also, the planning board is also proposing that that it's the new bulk regulations, and hopefully everybody got a copy of them. But we're suggesting that it's up to the village board, but we're suggesting that there be a 3-foot setback for rear and side for all accessory structures. So, just so if you want to go, I'm not saying you can't go closer. If you want to go closer, I guess you have to go to the zoning board. You have to.
Yeah, I
see
mean,
Dan.
ours is probably the only village where a 3-foot setback on all sides might be the entire lot.
Right. I know initially the zoning board wanted it to be, I think 7 feet. And I said, I don't think people don't have 7 feet in their backyard.
Gary, I got a note that I don't think you digging a pond is covered by this.
For dig
It's
request,
building your
it could be-
structures.
But it could be a fence for a dig request, so you're not digging a post hole where a sewer line's running through somebody's
Yeah,
yard.
I understand. I understand. I'm just picking on
Thank you, I appreciate that.
you. It's a sign of love in my family.
Ah,
Tom, there's a capital I'd like to make. On where it says chapter 91, 91 to 4, first phrase of paragraph B is all replaced by the following. And then when it says issue a certificate that no building permit is required, that no is not capitalized and it is everywhere else. So I was thinking we could capitalize that no, if that's what we're calling it, a certificate that no building permit is required. So I want to capitalize that no. And earlier we put without fee in parentheses, and we don't have parentheses in that one section. So we could maybe add that. So anyway, who's in charge of this? Kim, Tom? You're both muted. Well,
Tom, I think you have you have the law, so you should probably get it to me.
Mr. Peterson, I'm speaking to you.
I think he's asleep on the couch.
I'm saying certainly, okay.
You make the corrections, you'll give it to me?
Well, yes, I'll do that.
Okay, all right.
Any more comments before we close the public hearing?
Anyone muted who needs to unmute?
Okay, public hearing is hereby closed and the regular meeting of the Round Lake Village Board of Trustees is opened at 7 p.m. Public comment. Hearing none, we will move on to reports. I'll give the superintendent report. We flooded the skating rink again to try to, we got some nice cold weather coming, so we hope Hope to get that going up for the weekend. And that's about it. Treasurer's report. Yes.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. So as usual, I emailed the treasurer's report to all the board members, along with the current trial balance. And this month, I also emailed the mid-year revenue appropriations analysis so that you could check out where we're at since we're in the middle of the fiscal year. Let's see, today I mailed 1099s and W-2s, so you should be getting your W-2s in the mail, hopefully soon. I have 2 requests for resolution. Number 1, expense account A7110.4 Parks Contractual lacks the needed funds to cover pending and anticipated claims. Expense account A7110.2 Parks Equipment currently has $2,493 available. That's typically a line item that we don't use much of at all. So I think with our next budget, we'll kind of adjust this a little bit because this is actually the second time that we've needed to move money from Parks Equipment to Parks Contractual. So maybe we'll take that into consideration when we do budgeting. But with that being said, resolution is requested to transfer $2,000 from the Parks Equipment expense account to the Parks Contractual expense account. And the budget entry follows.
I'll make that motion.
Second,
I'll
Discussion?
second. Does someone second? All right.
No discussion? Poll?
Tom,
Yes.
Heidi,
yes.
Paul,
Yes.
and Gary.
Yes.
All right, number 2. The fire chief's 2011 Chevy Tahoe was sold to the Village of Stillwater. Payment has been received in the amount of $10,000 and will be deposited into the general fund bank account. The fire chief has asked that this $10,000 be appropriated for future equipment purchases. With this being said, resolution is requested to increase expense account A3410.2, which is fire equipment, and also revenue account A2665, sale of equipment, both by $10,000. And that will, the budget entry there that you see will appropriate that $10,000.
Motion?
You want a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Second,
I'll second it.
Discussion?
Yeah, I just, maybe I'm not understanding fully. You have $10,000 coming in and you're increasing 2 expense accounts each by 10,000, or what am I missing there?
One is revenue and one is expense, and it's actually kind of tricky. It just dawned on me actually the other day. What it looks like is that I'm taking money out of the revenue and just putting it into the expense account and appropriating it. That's what I picture in my head when I do it, but how you would actually say it is that I'm increasing the budget. So I'm increasing the revenue line to make it appear that that $10,000 went in there, and then I'm appropriating it on the expense side.
Got it.
It's
Thank you.
tricky. Yes.
We're selling village equipment and putting it into a fund to buy future village equipment.
Sure.
we'll vote Tom,
Yes.
Heidi,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Gary.
Yes.
Okay.
And that is it for me, other than the abstract.
Okay, animal control, Wireless, Chief.
Am I back on?
You're on.
Yep.
I don't have anything different than the report I gave at the beginning of the month. We're just working on getting our people vaccinated. We have about 35 people so far that have either signed up and have dates or already have the vaccine. So far that's moving along pretty good. Any questions about anything?
Nope.
Are employees required, are volunteers required?
No, we're not making it mandatory. We get like daily emails of when it's available and you have to hurry up and go on and sign up before they fill up.
Mhm.
I haven't heard anybody that says they're not getting it yet.
Okay.
It's just taking time because they fill up very quickly. I mean, you can be on and by the time you get done, the whole day's filled.
Yep.
So people are just getting on as quick as they can. They do some more that's going to come up Friday morning. So some more people will try to get signed up Friday morning. It's just very difficult. So
Yeah, my concern was, are there people who did not want it and would be,
so far I have not heard of any that say they're definitely not going to get it.
Okay.
I think pretty much we'll have 100% participation by the time we get all done.
Frank, who's given the shots to your guys and gals?
Most of them are signed up at University of Albany. They opened a site down there. Last week, the county opened up at the new communications building out at the training center. Couple guys have got them through like Schenectady County through work and stuff like that. But mostly those two places have the largest amount of shots available. So that's where we've been able to get most of the people signed up. And they've streamlined the process. I went yesterday and I was out of there probably within 20 minutes from the time I walked in till the time I got back in the car. So it moves along really quick.
They give you the second date at the same time to come back?
Yep, while you're getting prepared to get your shot, the girl's typing everything into the computer. And by the time they give you your shot, they give you a card with your second date on it. So
that's my understanding. That's what they're doing with everyone, that it's 28 days later, usually at the same site and the same time.
yep, that's pretty much it. My appointment is so many days at the exact same time I got it yesterday. So they've got the process down, at least in those locations. That it's gone.
Clarification is, it's 28 days for the Pfizer shot, Moderna shot, 21 days for the Pfizer. In case any,
Yeah, it could be. Mine's 3 weeks from yesterday and I got the
that's
file.
it.
Yeah, I have a Moderna, so it's 28.
Yeah, me too.
So, and so far, nobody's had any reactions, a couple sore arms here and there, but that's about it. So looks like we'll at least be able to move forward with that. Kim, you should have gotten the contract back from the town today.
Yeah, saw that.
You got it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
that's it.
All righty, thank you. Peter,
Well, we currently have 3 units under construction in Griffin's Ridge at various stages. And we have 6 units up at Victoria Landing under construction at various stages. It's very slow. I was there today and there didn't look like any contractors were working today. I don't know whether it was weather related. None of the buildings have heat in them yet, but they've slowed down as it gets cold. Other than that, the planning board did meet and we're reviewing a project on 33 acres at the end of New York Avenue. We didn't meet with we just looked at the application to see if for completeness, and we're going to meet again this time with the applicant on February 10th to review his proposal. I included a copy of the village architectural standards, which are part of, he will have to meet because of it's not a PDD, it's a cluster development. And under our code, cluster development, you need to meet architectural standards. We have some issues with it that we'll work out. Probably the major issue is the water. The site is actually higher than the water tower, and so the water pressure would need water pumps and generators and holding tanks and stuff like that. So we're starting the process on February 10th, and we'll do the whole thing by Zoom. But I'm not saying that using Victoria Landing as an example, which took a number of years at the planning board, but hopefully we'll be able to have public meetings, even in the auditorium in the spring, to review the proposal. But that's it for now for the building department.
Can I ask you a question, Peter, on this? Are there going to be discussions about New York Avenue, its width, the intersection with Curry, in addition to another road out and things of that nature with this? In other words, if this guy meets all the requirements of dealing with just the property and building the houses, seems to me that there's a whole bunch of other stuff that's got to be discussed.
Yeah, there is, Tom, and we, the planning board looked at this and thought it's such a mammoth undertaking that we recommended that we send a letter to the engineer, at least outlining, almost basically saying, are you for real? I mean, there are issues with the roads, there are issues with the water. And we would like our engineer on board. We want an escrow account. And yes, they seem to be on board. The road is, both roads are too narrow. He's going to have to buy property along New York Avenue. It's a lot, there's a lot there. And we'd like to hopefully have more public input on this that's why we're hoping that by the time we get to public hearings, that we can have them in the auditorium, or I even spoke to Frank about using the firehouse. The firemen had a meeting up there and put the trucks out, and they could have 60 people using separation. So, some way that we could make this work so the public has some input into what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree. This Zoom business is only as good as far as it goes. I mean, this is a major development. Griffin's Ridge took 3 years, I think, from start to finally, getting the approval. And I don't know, maybe this guy, it's no secret. I don't think I'm telling a secret here. Maybe the guy wants to sell the property. Maybe we should be looking at that. Did you get an appraisal, Peter?
No.
No? I thought we were going to get an
Tom
appraisal.
could talk to that. I mean, we talked about that at the planning board. We thought not much of an effort here on this proposal, but in talking to our attorney, we don't want to see him aggressively looking to buy the land. We want him to make an offer to us to buy the land. It would appear, if we were aggressive, it would appear that we're giving him a hard time so we could buy it. We don't want that to be. We're gonna, hold his hand like we would anybody else. But I just think there are so many obstacles that he will, I believe he will look at us to sell the property to us. But we'll
Thank
see.
you.
Tom, in answer to your question, the applicant has been advised through its engineer of those concerns and others, so that it is not caught unawares at the next planning board meeting.
Thank you.
Also, we have an estimate from our engineer of the cost of review. We passed that along as well.
Okay, thank you, Peter.
Okay.
Next, auditorium AP3.
I don't have anything in particular to mention about AB3, but I guess there's been some progress on the auditorium, Kim.
Yeah, apparently they were there. I think that was from yesterday.
Who knew?
Who knew? I didn't know. Gary, did
Who
you
let them in? How did
Yeah.
they get in?
I let him in Monday and Tuesday.
Okay. Yeah.
Dan wanted a heads up to move.
I think
equipment.
I think there was a cross conversation today that Dan was on, and then he replied. I don't know if you were on that email.
I
Something
was
about
not.
the raceway of the electric, the audio lines, and I think they were out of the way, and I think they kind of got to understand that they didn't even need to be where the audio lines were, so everything was fine.
I felt badly though, because I promised
know.
Dan he'd get a heads up.
I felt badly too. As soon as you said, I'm like, oh no. And then they
Yeah.
sent those pictures showing that they had dug out the floor of the auditorium, and it was kind
Grim.
of amazing. Those
Grim.
pictures were like, yikes. But completely rebuilt the bases of those columns with steel, and pretty amazing little engineering feat there.
But I think the bad news is we can probably expect the same thing to be happening
More
to
of
the
them.
other posts. The
Yeah.
good news is we have the engineering part done, and if we need to apply it to others, but
How many did they do this time? I
One.
thought it was one, right?
Yeah.
it was evidently sinking. I mean, to my uneducated naked eye, it was sinking. So it looks like, just from what the pictures are, that the post may have been on some kind of footer at some time, but at some point, dirt was filled in around it, and then a layer of concrete, which is the current slab, was poured on top of that. So the portion of the post between the slab and the old footer rotting, making the whole thing sink. So it's entirely logical to expect they did the same thing to other posts, and we're going to have the same thing happening again. Some posts have been stabilized in different ways over the years, obviously, just from looking at them. Again, totally uneducated. But I would not be surprised to think that we have to do the same thing in other posts in years to come. So.
Mhm. I could send around some pictures tomorrow for people to see the work.
Okay, that's it. Under old business, paper streets. Or anything more to discuss on that? I don't think so.
Well, where are we at with, it was paper streets and encroachment that kind of got tabled in December, and we were going to come back to it. So where does that stand?
I put together and highlighted a map showing the paper streets and which ones were already parkland and which were not parkland. And I think the board needs to make a determination of whether we are going to take the paper streets that are not or may not be parkland and either make them parkland or not.
Didn't we discuss that? At least I know we didn't vote, but I thought there was a sense to the board at the last meeting, and I think Matt, I don't want to speak for Matt, but I think Matt and I don't know if somebody else did, kind of were of the mind that we don't really need to do anything. There's no sense in making something parkland where you can't really come back out of that and just deal with it when the time comes. We didn't really want to sell the paper streets, and we don't want to make them parkland at this point. That was my sense.
I think you're correct, Paul. We did have a discussion, and I think that the consensus is we ought to just leave some of this alone rather than lock it up as all parkland and then have no other options. Depending on, there could be individual circumstances that could change, make us change our mind. So yeah, so you're right. That was kind of the consensus, although we didn't really vote on it.
Right.
There are
The motivating property on, I guess it's 8th Street, has decided not to do the work on village property, but to sell the house. So she is not doing the work. She's the concrete porch is still there on village property, but it's been there for 50 years.
there are paper streets that are parkland under our existing parkland deeds where people are parking. Is the board permitting people to continue parking on parkland where that has been done in the past?
That was my sense that, well, enough people said that we really don't mind them parking, but they're already parking even if it's designated parkland. We had no issue with it. And I don't think any particular situation was presented us that would show us that there was a problem in one of those areas.
I think, yeah, I don't know if anybody's raised a concern about a paper street this year being used as parking and that being a problem, but other parts of parkland being used by residents has been brought to my attention. And I think we didn't address that because Peter was looking for some sort of overarching decision about how we're going to approach, what we're going to ask people to do. And he didn't want to apply it differently in different places. So I don't know if what we're doing is giving him guidance or not.
Well, I guess we're not. We're not really giving them guidance, but if it's kind of like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. At the same time, if it's somebody just parking a car, and we don't have to get through there with snowplows, there's no reason to restrict the person from parking. But on the other hand, if they're stacking, piles of building material and leaving it, then I think we got another problem. But I don't know what you're referring to, Heidi. I know we've talked about a couple specific issues that have either been resolved or just kind of went away on their own.
There's one that I know of that's not, and a recreational vehicle is parked on it, and it's parkland, and we need to figure out what to do on that because I've been asked by residents, and so is Peter, to deal with that.
That's
Are they permanently parked there?
Well, they could move it, once a month if they had to, yeah, but it's basically, it's parked there. It's on, it's a trailer. We also have unregistered vehicles parked on paper streets. How do we deal
Yeah,
with
the
that?
one I'm talking about is not a paper street, it's just parkland.
It's parkland, yeah.
But I think we went back to paper streets to say, okay, how do we start dealing with this, front to back? And if we're not going to deal with paper streets, or we wait, or encroachment in general, are we waiting for a complaint and then we address those individually, or how do you want Peter to deal with these things?
I thought at the last meeting, Paul was saying that we should notify people who have encroached onto village property by sending them a letter saying, we know that you are encroaching onto village property. I don't know after the letter if we do anything about it or not, but there's a number of people in the village that have encroached on village property.
Well, you can't, I'm pretty sure we have a law that says you can't have a unregistered vehicle on public property. Regardless where it is, whether it's on a public street or parkland or paper street, we ought to be, sending a notice to those people, telling them to move it.
How about if it's registered and they're storing it there?
Well, to address that, I think we have a couple of issues. The simplest is starting, do we want to take paper streets and just make them parkland? I don't think we do. The next is the parking issue, which is people who are parking unregistered vehicles that I think is not allowed, or parking, whether it's on paper streets or on public. I think that's something we might have to deal with. But I think the sense is that we don't want to just, as a way to deal with it, arbitrarily say all paper streets are now parkland.
Well, it's fine
So,
with.
yeah,
and I-
there's more a
point.
parking issue. Mhm.
I just, yeah, I mean, I do see the point about not adding all paper streets to parkland. That argument I heard before and makes sense. Now I want to know, are we, if people come to me and they complain about something, and I tell them to go to Peter, what do we want Peter to do?
Well, if, and I should ask the attorney, is there a difference between parking a legal vehicle on a public street and parking a legal vehicle on what's designated as parkland?
We can't stop people from parking on the street if it is otherwise legal under our local law. We can tell people that they cannot park on paper streets, whether or not those streets are parkland, because that is village property.
Yeah, basically the paper streets and the parkland is village property. We can say no unregistered vehicles, I assume. And we could probably say no long-term parking, more than X number of days. As Peter said, somebody could just move it around, but
Yes, but I highly recommend that we have a written policy, so
Right.
all similarly situated people are treated the same way.
So how many different categories do we have? Do we have paper streets? Do we have paper streets that are parkland?
Well, it's all village property, whether it's parkland or if it's right of way or paper street, it's village property. And the problem is there's so much of it going on around the village where people have just built patios out to the street, parking spaces out to the street. It's on village property in front of their house, but it's on village property. We have dumpsters on village property. It's, I don't know how we can curb it. I really don't.
We're mixing two issues here. One is using public property for private uses, like your neighbor with the patio that goes out onto village property, but that has nothing to do with paper streets.
Right.
With respect to paper streets, Heidi, the response to your question, there are four. There's paper streets that are not parkland, where people don't traditionally park. There are paper streets that are not parkland where people do park, and the same two categories for paper streets that are parkland. And I think with each of those four, we ought to have a policy.
And what about parkland that is not a paper street?
What about it? We allow parking along the side of some of the parks, like Row Park, but not off the edge, but we allow parking on the edge. And when we did our parkland deeds, we provided that one of the things that could be done in the parkland was to park along the edges.
Well, the one I'm specifically talking about is parkland, not a paper street with a recreational vehicle on it for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And the adjacent property owner continues to clear it and pour more gravel and make a wider space, and it is parkland. And it clearly is not to be used that way, and yet it continues. So in order to not single anybody out, because there are a wide variety of uses, we want to be able to be clear, give Peter guidance. But I mean, and maybe this is, more egregious than some of the others, but I mean, I think dumping gravel on parkland is not something we want. So where do we, what do we do to help Peter out so he doesn't, look
I think
like he's,
we probably should have a policy that says no. I don't know how you word it, long-term parking. I think we all understand people who have cars that they go in and out and they use and they need to park somewhere in the village will park on the edges of, we're allowed to park sometimes, but it's this storage of vehicles and equipment on village property basically shouldn't be allowed. And we should come up with something that would address that, whether it's on, paper street or a village property per se, that there's
Well, yeah.
long-term storage.
yeah, I mean, there's four, there's four iterations of paper streets, and then there's parkland that's not a paper street. And I don't know if there are any other categories, but we have 5 so far.
Well,
That-
you, the Board of Trustees, tell Peter and Tom or anybody else you want to put together a draft policy, what you want us to do. We'll reduce it to writing and circulate it for the board to review. But it's your decision. You tell us.
But while
Well,
there are
Mr.
4 or 5 iterations, I think there might only be one iteration of people storing, so to speak, vehicles on any village property. Whether you're one of those 4 iterations of paper streets or whether you're village parkland, I think we might want to just have something for long-term parking or of unregistered vehicles.
Well,
that
but that
they-
also goes with what Peter was saying, is that, about the patio. That's village property that was made into private use. So whether it's storing a vehicle or making a patio, or pouring gravel, those are all, things.
Well, one's a permanent structure. You're trying to take over the other, you're parking your vehicle, but it's not everyday usage vehicle. It's a long term, could be weeks or months, where you just take a trailer. Sometimes they might not even be movable unless they're pulled by a vehicle,
Well, I
and you're
understand the difference between a patio and a trailer. I'm just saying that when we're trying to have a minimum number of categories so that Peter can work with this, that village land that is being used for private purposes is not okay in what situations?
Well, I'm still talking about parking now, and the patio is not parking. So I see them as separate, but I understand the point you're making as we
Is
get
the
bigger and
code-
bigger and how we use.
Encroachment. We were talking about encroachment, and then we ended up talking about paper streets. And so I'm trying to get back to the encroachment so that we could give Peter an idea of how to enforce this.
Well,
Heidi, in the.
Oh, my mistake. Maybe I'm
situation you're
missing things.
referring
Isn't it
to-
true that you can't encroach?
I'm sorry?
In the situation you're referring to, Heidi, is the code ambiguous in any way? Peter, maybe you could answer that, or Tom? Or could that be handled under existing code?
are you
I don't know.
are you
if we
talking
have a
about the
code.
patio or the
No,
RV?
not the RV.
I cannot answer you without knowing where the RV is and looking at the code.
It could be handled, we could threaten them with using, village code, you have to move it. They have pointed out others, it happens every time. That's when I tell somebody you're doing something wrong, they point out 50 other people in the village are doing the exact same thing. And I said,
Maybe we gotta be taking a look at the existing code and regarding the use of public property for either storing or parking or using it. I know we have a policy on unregistered vehicles. So maybe we ought to look at that code and kind of expand it to include some of the things that we're talking about here. I don't know that we get a situation where everybody would be covered. But I think we want to discourage people storing things on village property. I mean, if you're using your car every day and you're parking it on a paper street, I mean, I don't have a problem with that. But if you've got an RV and it's on parkland, I mean, there's something wrong with that. So
I
how do
agree
we,
completely.
yeah, how do
I was
we,
gonna,
yeah, how do we reconcile that on paper vis-a-vis the law?
I may be wrong, but I think with the encroaching, with permanent things, whether it's a patio or in my opinion, even putting gravel down on our property, anything like that, I may be wrong, but I think that probably already isn't allowed. I know there, we can find examples where it is, but we should never allow that going forward of somebody building something permanent that, or using it in that way. However, I'm, as Tom was saying, for these things that are movable, even when they're just putting something down, you know, that can be carted off or a vehicle, we should have some parameter where that's not allowed for long-term storage, as we say, or at all. You know, maybe just, you know, it's one thing if somebody comes with an RV, an overnight guest, and they park there and then they're gone in a day or so. That I don't think we have too much of an issue with that. It's just,
Would you like for Peter and me to put together a proposed policy that sets forth the different categories that we've been talking about, but leaves the determination up to the board, but at least we identify all the things that the board needs to make a decision on.
Yes.
yeah, especially with what will help Peter, you know, because Peter would know what
Yeah.
what the problems are.
And what happened with the patio? We were going to give the people a letter, right? Was supposed to be taken down at the end of the season. Was what we?
And then they said, I'm not taking it down. I want to show you 5 other houses in the village that have the exact same thing. And I said, I went and I looked and I said, you're absolutely right. He said, you can't signal me out from when you have these other 5 people right in my neighborhood who are doing the exact same thing. You know, I didn't know how to deal with it. How could I say, it's okay for them, but it's not okay for you? Now, that's how he viewed it. He said, you're picking on me.
Well, I think it's probably time to have some policy on this then.
Yeah.
Well, that's what revising chapter 91 will do.
It does. It deals with revising that chapter. It deals with driveways, deals with people putting gravel down. You know, if it's on village property, or you know, it deals with that.
By what? Saying that they need.
You can't do it. You can't. It's saying. I think the chapter's saying any patios or driveways that you're going to do, you need to first see if you need a building permit to do it. If it's not your property, it's going to happen. It's not. Some people will say, "Hey, I want to go in front of my house so I can park my car in front of my house. So I'm going to pave where the grass is, and I'm going to take it all the way to my house and not have a front lawn. I'm just going to have blacktop or pavers or something like that." It's village property. I don't know how the board feels about that.
Yeah, but I mean, I thought we were talking about the policy the code that we're talking about is if on your own property. What you have to do on your own property that you have to get these permits, not what's going on with village property.
But the point is, once
can't get a-
we adopt this and inform everybody, send a letter to everybody so that they have the piece of paper saying, oh, if I'm doing anything, I've got to talk to Peter first. Then there's no reason for anybody to say, well, I didn't know about it. So, and look, they did it in the past. So.
Well, I don't think, did it say driveways?
Oh, is what?
Did it say driveways?
I believe it does say driveway.
Are we talking about the thing we
The-
just had a public hearing about?
Yes.
Yes.
I didn't, maybe I didn't register with me, but I didn't hear driveways.
I don't see it in there. Is this the, wait a minute.
Well, it says-
Pavement, patio or deck.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that. I know that happened fairly recently, was that somebody paved over some existing sewer lines. So they had to basically undo the paving and redo some stuff.
I'm looking at the wording now, and it does say chimney, flue, shed, outbuilding, fence, pavement, patio, or deck. Do we need to add a word in there or not? Or is that covered? I mean, I think you'd have to pave if you're doing a driveway, but I suppose if you're not doing a paved driveway, you wouldn't
No,
have
what
to.
if you're just on
Right.
gravel?
A gravel driveway.
That's, you know, I would consider that pavement. You're paving something, you're putting gravel down. Yeah. so
True.
I would say you need to get, you know, you need to come and say, I'm gonna be doing this. And then we could look at it and say, oh,
Right.
that's on village property, or, no, that's fine. You're on your own property.
Tom, can we add driveway or parking spot to the language?
Well, we have pavement. I think that without having to go back and have a new public hearing and so forth, that if we simply clarified it by putting a parenthesis after that,
Yeah.
e.g. Asphalt, gravel, or other material, close paren, then I think we're fine.
All right.
Board like to do
Oh.
that?
Yeah.
And since that's what our definition of pavement was, we're clarifying, we don't need another public hearing just to add that to
We
it.
do not need another public hearing.
Good. Perfect.
Do we want Tom to draft up a policy with regard to paper streets and parkland and the different ways people can park and leave vehicles? Then we revisit that?
Tom and Peter.
I mean, we do have to figure out something about parkland, because this is gonna keep,
Yeah.
you know,
But I think he and Peter said they'd work on something. Well, we can work off of that.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay, under new business.
so, wait, excuse me, just one more moment. So are you saying that you feel that the code that we're just talking about, that people will understand that we're not just talking about their own land, we're talking about the village land too? I mean, if people are encroaching on village land, are they going to go to Peter because of this code and say, oh, I was thinking of doing this, so I have to ask Peter?
No, but if
I
they
don't know
do,
whether they will or not, but if they don't, they certainly don't have any excuse to say, oh, I just didn't know.
Plus, generally speaking, isn't an issue where they're doing it on their own land and then also encroaching. So when Peter sees the extent of the project, he can determine, are you on village land or not? I think if somebody's going off and just doing something isolated on village land, that's not going to be allowed. You know, I don't
Just
see
not
what they're.
allowed. I mean, it should be.
if somebody is expanding on putting more gravel down on their driveway or this, now we have a law that says you can't do that. You can't be putting gravel, whether it's your property or village property, you can't do it without first getting permission.
Mhm, mhm.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on to Chapter 91. And I will read the resolution to adopt. Whereas the Village Board of Trustees wishes to amend Chapter 91 of the Village Code to provide that the building inspector must be consulted prior to construction to determine whether a building permit is required. And whereas the Board of Trustees duly noticed through publication and posting a public hearing regarding the proposed amendments. And whereas a public hearing was duly held at 6:50 p.m. on the 20th day of January 2021, the date and time scheduled therefore. And whereas the local law reviewed at the public hearing was provided to and in the hands of each trustee more than 10 days prior to the public hearing. And whereas the Village Board of Trustees heard all comments made at such public hearing, now therefore it is resolved that the Village Board of Trustees approves, adopts, and enacts the proposed local law in the form annexed hereto, and directs the village clerk to file the same with the New York State Secretary of State forthwith.
So resolved.
Second,
Second,
discussion?
Tom,
Yes.
Heidi,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes. And next on the agenda, short-term rental committee update. Tom, prior to the meeting, sent out an updated, revised, and condensed version. Haven't really had time to look at it myself. I don't know about the rest of you.
I took a quick look, but I couldn't tell, maybe it was just my computer, what the new language was and what the existing language was. Was that,
It's
My
very,
fault?
there's a lot that has changed. We started working on definitions and then we were working on condensing and then we're having a few things that we felt needed to come back to the board, the village board or the planning board, for clarification. But it's not a completed document.
okay. So can we at some point get a document that shows the old and the new?
There is no old because short-term rentals were not permitted under the old code. They're being added as special permitted uses in RV1 and RV2. And the requirements for a special use permit under the current iteration, the current draft, is that the code enforcement officer would have to come in and confirm that the uniform code, which is required by the state, we don't have anything to say about that, that the property is in compliance with that. A few other things, like there have to be liability insurance, and that right now, the way it's set up is that the owner would have to reside there most of the year, so that it's, even though there could be a period of time, for example, during track season, where you could have short-term rental during that season and the owner is not there, that for the bulk of the year, the owner would have to reside there. It being the committee's belief that having the owner reside in the building most of the time will keep the building in good shape.
Yeah, I have the copy of the old of what we had before, which I think you gave us last meeting, and this one I personally have not had a chance to go through it, so I'd be ready at our next meeting to talk about it. But
At our
I
next
skimmed it.
meeting, we're going to have a more definitive copy. I think that it was. I don't know. You can.
I appreciate the work you've done already. I mean, I glanced through it, but I didn't get a chance to compare the two. Not, but as you say, this is mostly new stuff anyway. But so
Well,
yeah, if you just
the older version required an operating permit, which is something you usually require
right.
businesses to get, as well as a special use permit. We've taken out the requirement for an operating permit altogether, as being too onerous.
Right.
But you still need a special permit, a special use permit.
Gotcha. Okay.
And next on the agenda is a proposed table of bulk regulation changes. Peter, what did you want to do with that?
I want everybody to look at it and again, maybe have a public hearing and try to make that into law. The only thing new on here, and Tom, I don't know if you saw it, you added some language about land conservation, which I wasn't sure. I should meet with you again and say, because I took it out because I thought on land conservation, it's very setbacks. You need 10 acres of land to build a single house if your property is land conservation. So I think it would require a special permit But the major changes is we added accessory structures to our current bulk regulations. And if it's RB1, it's 7 feet side setback and 10 feet rear setback with 12 feet height. If it's RB2, which is inside the major village, it's 3 feet rear and side and 8 feet in height. So that's really what we're adding there, is that accessory structures, which are not on our bulk regulations.
So accessory structures was the only thing that was added and everything else has been there. Like
Right,
that?
everything else has been there.
Okay, Peter, when we sit down to talk about that policy we discussed about 10 minutes ago, we can go through the table that's on my word processor and make sure that all of those changes have been made that
Okay,
you just described.
okay, great.
Why, can I just ask why it's called bulk regulations? What that means?
I don't know. Kim asked me that today. He said, why is it called bulk? I don't know, because it has to do with property in a building. I don't know. That's how.
I have no idea. I do know that other communities use that same phrase.
They do?
Let's change it.
Well, I don't know what, yeah, because like, what is it? A bulk to me, it's like bulk disposal? I don't know. I just didn't know what bulk was about.
Peter, we'll come
By
up-
the way, I wouldn't change it without looking into it. I just put what are bulk regulations in Google, and it comes right up as zoning ordinances and what they are. They limit the size of lots. There's a meaning for that. So I wouldn't change it without investigating.
All right, well, maybe we can put a brief definition in there to help populace and the board going forward.
Tom,
It has to do with, anyway, I won't read it, but you can look it up.
I was just, Tom, I was just gonna say, did you say that the bulk regulations could be reviewed along with some of the paper street discussion and do those at this public hearing? Is that part of the same chapter?
No, I was
Am I-
saying, Peter and I, when we sit down between meetings, we'll cover both of those together.
And how do we, okay,
They will each be circulated, but they are not related, so they would be addressed separately by the board at the next meeting.
Would that require a public hearing
Yes,
for
sir.
the bulk changes?
Yes,
yeah.
Okay.
it's a change to our zoning law.
Okay, next, see, Matt brought up allowing daytime parking on Second Ave. I think we can hold that off till the next meeting, because I don't think there's going to be any parking there over the next 2 weeks anyways, because there's too much snow. And we covered the last one at the last meeting, fire department elections. Next, it's not on the agenda, but the policy for the use of the community room and the auditorium.
Sure.
I think Heidi did. I had one comment on the community room use. And that is, it looks like you added a fee to the use of local civics and nonprofit organizations. And I was wondering,
No, I think it was an either or before. I don't have a feeling about it one way or another. I just didn't take it out. I just reworded it.
before it said local civic and not-for-profit organizations may request to use the community room, full stop. All events and organizations must have a direct substantial connection to the Village Round Lake. And in the revision, it said, may request to use or rent the community room for a fee. So the intent wasn't to,
The former one said the Village of Round Lake shall rent or allow use of the community room. So that was the fee part.
but, or allow use doesn't
Right.
imply has to be a fee. Because there certainly
No,
hasn't been in the past.
yeah.
Anyway, the intent was not to charge a fee to Whirlus and the library board and Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts.
And cookie smackdowns, for God's sake.
Or in Cookie
Well,
Smack.
I think it says the Village of Round Lake shall permits the use of community room for public village activities. That's clear that says nothing about a fee there.
Right.
And when it says local civic and for-profit organizations may request to use or rent the village room, I didn't want rent or, I went use or rent, not for a fee. That was
So for a
redundant.
fee should be.
I
crossed
don't
out.
care if you think that we are never interested in charging a fee. No, I don't mean for Round Lakers. I mean local civic organizations from somebody from Malta that wants to use this, that has a relationship with us, and we would never charge a fee. Then let's just take out rent and fee completely. I have no issue with that.
I think we could leave or to use or rent is okay, and that would cover what you're talking about. But at least the way I'm reading it, if you say for a fee at the end, it kind of distributes over the prior two uses.
And what I said is I didn't mean to do that. That was a typo. I had for a fee. When I put rent in earlier, I didn't take out for a fee.
Okay, so that goes out.
Yep.
And the other thing was, do we really want the trustees to approve every use, or could that be left to the clerk? And if there's any question, refer it to the board. It just seems a little cumbersome. That
I'm
basically
totally
how-
fine with that. It's always been that way. If we want to change that, that's fine. I was, editing things for the way we use it. And if we want to change that, that wasn't going to be my decision.
It's a consensus on that. Board?
I think that we should let the village board let the office generally handle it unless it's something unusual and you would know and bring that to get our sense. Somebody wants to do a long-term thing to rent it every Monday. I think you'd bring that to us, but generally speaking, these are small things, local.
It's generally obvious when someone comes in and it's an oddball request,
Yeah, but we say requests for community room use are submitted directly to the village office for approval.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it says for the auditorium policy too. So you got that change, Kim?
Yep.
I have it changed too. Yeah, I didn't think we needed to approve the adult supervision either. Which is in there.
Okay, resolution, community room policy, be it resolved that the Round Lake Village Board of Trustees readopts a community room policy as amended.
I'll move that.
Second.
Discussion?
Just a point, given the circumstances with the pandemic, I don't want to complicate it at all. I don't believe we've had any requests other than Whirlus still uses it, right, Kim?
I believe so.
But
And planning board occasionally.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I just would be a little concerned if somebody wanted to use it, some nonprofit, Boy Scouts, whatever. I guess we have to figure that they're gonna, apply all the, the pandemic related stipulations to it, I would guess.
Well, we do have, number 4 is that we can impose any reasonable restrictions we deem necessary.
Yeah. So if they had 60, you could have put 60 people in a room, basically.
No.
Yeah.
We'd require them to
Com-
be social distancing, would be
Yeah.
one of our requirements.
I mean, I just don't think it ought to be in the policy, but that there ought to be at least at your doorstep, Kim. That's where.
That's easy. I
That-
mean,
yeah,
it's
that's
common
pretty clear.
sense stuff.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's covered in the language.
Okay.
All right. Want to vote, Tom?
Yes.
Heidi? Paul?
Yes.
And Gary?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, next, the auditorium rental policy. Everybody had a chance to look that over?
Heidi, did you increase fees
I
for full day use?
And I wanted to talk about it a little bit. It just seemed that I did not increase well, you see which ones there are because they're red, the
Full
ones,
day, yeah.
right? Because they just did not seem in line with the other ones, but that was my stab at it. And I thought that I wanted to see how everybody else felt about it.
And Adrian sent hers, but did she make any changes or you?
No, she was not, she wasn't changing the policy. She was
Okay.
changing the relationships, the personnel contract.
Yeah, the staffing part.
Policy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a different thing.
So I don't, I would be, if people don't think the fees should be that, we can change it back, but that's.
I had a thought on the fees. I noticed that for village residents, now I'm talking only, you have Friday, Saturday was $225. You're going to raise to 400. Even that it's 2 hours more and you're not doubling it, which is fine. So I think if you do raise it, you get a discount if you take the whole day, in other words. Yet on the Monday, Thursday, the suggestion, if I'm reading it right, was to double it from 150 to 3. I think you'd want it to be 150 to 250 or something, because once again, it's adding 2 more hours and you get a slight discount.
I was kind of trying to have a relationship between what we are charging. You can look at it a couple different ways. But I was looking at it as a relationship between what we're charging non-villagers versus villagers.
Right. Well, I guess my point is it's not right now. They're not the same. You've raised the Friday to Sunday. It's not 450. 225 twice would be 450. The non-village residents is
Right,
double,
I
3
know.
to 6.
Because
So-
450 sounded like a lot to me, and I was
No, I'm actually agreeing with you. I'm saying if we raise the fees, we do 225 to 400 for village residents. We should go 150 to 250, not the 300
okay.
for weekdays to
Okay.
make them the same. You know what I'm saying is for
Sure.
village residents, you'd always offer slightly less to do the whole day.
Sure. I'm fine with that.
Can you state what the fees? I don't have the paper in front of me, Paul.
It's
All I'm saying is a Monday to Thursday full day would be 250, not 210 or not 300. I mean, right now it says
Okay.
300.
there were 2 changes
Right.
in red. And
Yeah,
instead of being 210 and 315, they would be 250 and 400.
Okay. All right, I can make those changes if we're all agreeing to that.
Any other questions? I suggested that we start including parking at the ball fields, which was not in the original. We talked about parking along the,
Basketball court you took out, that was good.
took out the basketball court, but I added in the ball fields.
Yeah,
Because I know that we've just been saying that more lately and it's.
To the north of the village near the ball fields. Okay.
yeah.
Gotcha.
All right. Be it resolved that the Round Lake Village Board of Trustees readopts the auditorium policy as amended.
with changes as presented.
Yes.
I make that motion.
Second,
Second.
Tom, second.
Tom,
Discussion?
Tom, vote.
Yes.
Heidi,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes,
Gary,
yes.
Yes.
Gary, before we go on to something else, there's one other, I'd just like to get asked something about. I'm working on another policy. It's not ready to present tonight. But I've gone through the whole ethics policy, and I just had a question before I go further. I'd like to get the sense of the board. The ethics policy, which is pretty good, I've only made fairly minor suggestions here and there, but the one major thing that I'm kind of stuck on is this calls for, and I think it's been in place since 2007, that at each yearly meeting that an ethics panel of 5 people and 2 alternates be appointed, and people can bring them their ethics. I don't know that we have, I mean, we don't have that as far as I know. So my question is, do we want to do that? Is it onerous? Is there a way, should it be worded something like would be appointed as needed, you know, if an issue comes up? Can we get away with that? Would that make more sense? I don't know if there's a legality there, or whether we have to have a committee, and it just seems like having these committees we don't really use. I think it's good to have this policy and a good for people to have see what it is and have a recourse. But it would seem to me if we're allowed to legally, that we could appoint a group if an issue comes up.
The concern is that if an issue arises, that the appointment of the board, the members of the ethics committee, there may be a suspicion that they are being appointed based on existing
Gotcha.
biases. I think it's better to have the board appointed at a time when there's nothing on the table.
Okay,
But are we going to do that?
well, I just dug that up, so I'll take a look at it.
Yeah, we can talk about it either on the email, but that was my one concern overall with whether we're going to do that, or whether, you know, how we deal with it. Okay.
Can we talk about that at the next meeting? Kim, you want to make a note of
Yep.
that?
Yeah.
And that brings us to correspondence. No correspondence?
No correspondence.
I believe the issue of the dedication of parkland to the village at Griffin's Ridge is supposed to be on the agenda. And I believe Nadine Shadlock, who's the attorney for the Monty Builders, is here for that, to be able to respond to that.
Yep, I'm here, Tom.
There was a portion of land on the northeastern corner of the development behind the new houses that have been approved by the village, which was slated to be dedicated to the village. It's between the stream and there's already some wetland that's owned by the village that was conveyed by the original owner. And now there's an additional strip of land, which in negotiations with the planning board, it was agreed that that would be conveyed to the village. A map was provided. There was some discussion with that. Terrific.
Perfect.
0.83 acres. And there was some discussion with that. And my understanding is that Peter is satisfied that that's the land that's being offered is the same land that was agreed upon with the planning board and was included in the map that was filed with the county. We had a conference call earlier this week between Nadine and Peter and myself, Peter Sheridan and myself. And by the conclusion of that discussion, it seemed that all issues have been resolved. Peter, is that your recollection?
Correct, yes.
I recommend that the village board accept the dedication of this parcel.
So we will need a resolution doing that.
Yes,
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
I looked at the map. I was a little unclear. I don't need to see it again, but I just need to know, Tom and Nadine and Peter, that section of the lands being dedicated include that old farm and the farm foundation that exists there. And I'm not exactly sure where that is.
It's right here. I checked that out this morning.
Okay,
I don't know if you can see my cursor moving, but it's right
I
about.
can. Yep, I can. Okay.
and Nadine, I have a question. There was an area where leftover cement had been dumped. And is that within the 0.83 acres that we're discussing?
No, it's not, Tom.
No, that's up
I-
here.
I
That
believe
was-
that's correct. It's not.
It
Okay,
was in
thank you.
lot. Yeah,
And Belmonte Builders will pay the filing fees?
Yes. All I need is the signed documents returned to the title company, but you and I can circle back offline to effectuate.
Very good. Those have already been delivered to us and they are an acceptable form.
Just acceptable, Tom?
Absolutely. Oh, they were.
Beautiful.
Exceptional was the word. Exceptional form, I heard.
Yes.
acceptable.
Yes. That's what Tom usually says, so I was just wanting that, that's all.
Nadine, I apologize for the oversight. I would have put this earlier had I realized.
No, we're fine. I always can find something to keep me busy.
She works morning, noon, and night anyway.
Yeah. Yep, busy times. Well, we really appreciate, the courtesy and the cooperation of the village, and we wish you well with that piece of land. We hope it all, forms a nice new addition to the village's property.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay?
It's actually quite scenic with the river, with the stream there. It's a nice little spot.
Yeah, no, it truly is.
Shall we vote?
Yep.
Tom,
Yes.
Heidi, Paul,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Tom, you'll get me some language on, for that? Some legalese?
Yes, I will do that.
Next, we have the approval of the minutes.
Am I set?
You are set.
Magnificent. Have a wonderful evening and everybody stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good
Thanks.
night.
A motion to accept the Round Lake Village Board of Trustee public hearing and meeting December 16th meeting minutes.
So move.
Second.
Discussion?
All aye?
Aye.
Aye.
And a motion to accept the Round Lake Village Board of Trustees annual meeting and workshop meeting, January 6th.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
All aye?
Aye.
Aye.
And approval of abstract.
I don't have the number in front of me.
In the amount.
Is it 600,000? Is this at $600,055
No.
and 23 cents? Is that right? Oh, I have the wrong one. Let's see.
That would.
Oh, that's that one.
That'd be a lot of money.
So moved. I know. I
Scary.
thought it was. I was going to ask about it.
149,770.70.
I know. That's what I was wondering, but I was looking at the wrong place. $149,777.70. I so
better.
resolved.
Second,
Discussion?
All aye?
aye.
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 All right.
Village attorney,
I do not have anything else.
nor do I. Village trustees?
One thing that's, I think we ought to start thinking about doing something about. We had this giant snowstorm, and apparently one of the trucks, the big trucks, failed. To what extent, I'm not sure how bad it is,
It was
but I
pretty
do
bad.
know it's a 30-year-old truck that has virtually probably little or no value, and it's being held together with duct tape and twine. And I also know that the small pickup truck, the F-150, whatever it is, 350, is due to be replaced. And I think we ought to start thinking about putting together a package and seeing if we can update those. I mean, 30 years old for a truck
Yeah.
is way, way overdue.
Yeah, John and I had that conversation already.
I was hoping John was going to be here because I thought he could add some insight to his how much money we're pouring into that 30-year-old truck and whether it makes any sense to continue or makes more. I think we got about $70,000 in the replacement fund, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. that's around
And maybe we ought to be trying to figure out a way to get either one or both of those replaced.
I spoke with him a little while ago and he said he wanted to get with Gary again about
Yeah.
the specifics and then come to next month's meeting and talk about it with the board.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, public comment?
I'm one of the few public people left here. I just, all this talking about parking, and it jogged my memory. I probably should just send an email to Kim tomorrow, but there's a car parked down by the alleged skating rink that has got 2 flat tires and expired inspection. And does anyone know anything about that?
It's my neighbors, the lizard people. The people who have the lizard.
It just seems like, if we
I
have a policy.
usually
that's-
check for the inspections and registrations. I didn't notice it. That had expired.
I didn't either. It was pointed out to me. And not by
There
my
was
daughter.
There has been a moratorium, I believe, on inspections or on one of those.
Yeah, that
I
inspections,
think it's from 2019.
that expired.
Oh, and
That expired in November, I think. The moratorium.
Okay.
Yeah, but if you got flat tires in an unregistered vehicle, that's called an eyesore.
No, I'm
Yeah,
not disagreeing.
Yeah.
We had some discussion recently about entering into a contract with a towing company in case we needed to have something towed. And I think that may have fizzled out. I request that be put on the agenda for next month, which will force us to go out and get a proposal so that if we do need to have something towed, we have the paper in place to be able to do so.
Agreed.
Yep.
Always in Albany, living in Albany, always feared Dot's Garage. They were prowling the streets.
Troy,
On Central Ave, right?
Yeah.
yeah.
Don't ask me how I know that.
Oh, if your car was gone, you went to Dot's Garage because they had it.
All right, no executive session, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. We'll fight over it. Heidi can all
You-
at once, unanimous.
Unanimous.
All, yeah,
All right.
I.
Like the
Aye.
buzzer on Jeopardy. Who can get to the buzzer fastest to adjourn?
Well, thank you all.
Thank you. Good night to everyone. See you again
Night.
soon.
All right.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Adios.